Okay, space detectives, alien detectives, bloggers, and people with general interest in space. Today, I'm going to be looking at what NASA said about Mars in the big announcement that there was a big lead up to just yesterday. Now, this may be a little bit complicated because there's a lot going on here and a lot more going on than we're being led to believe. Now, if you're new to this channel, you may not know this, but there was life on Mars, but NASA don't seem to be allowed to tell you that. And I'm going to show you a little bit of evidence for that here, but I'm also going to show you a little video clip. Now, what I did is I was on the NASA TV channel here, and this is just the space station, I think, or satellite or something going on here. But I was on here yesterday, and I recorded the full conference, which was about an hour. And I've also been asked to write articles for the Daily Express in the UK, because the guy there, Sebastian, one of the science editors, I think he is, was asking me what my opinion was before the announcement. And there's also, I've just sent an email off to him. He just asked me again what my opinion was of the announcement. So there should be another article about that later, which I will post on ArtAlienTV Mars magazine and various other sites as well, so you can read that. So if you're not a member of Mars magazine, come along and join. It's totally free. So I will keep you all up to date on it. Any new developments I will put on this page in this group, and you can just read it as it comes up. And there's an article here from the International Business Times that from a couple of days ago as well. Space journalist spots alien skulls on Mars just hours before NASA press meet. So I think this was taken from the story that I did for the Express, and I think there may be a related newspaper or news outlet. But this is IB Times India, this one. So a lot of people in Asia are reading about this as well, which is pretty cool. Right, let's crack on with this because it's going to get complicated. Now, what I'm going to show you now is a little bit of the conference that really caught my eye. I sat through it and started falling asleep after about sort of half an hour. But there was a section of the conference which I thought was really interesting. Now I'm just going to play you a section of it now. I'm not going to go through everything because there will be plenty of information on Mars magazine about what those said, and also some of the diagrams and explanations about the methane spikes, which we've known about since the 1970s, as well as the evidence for possible microbial. Well, they didn't actually announce microbial life. What they did announce was organic material that may have been produced by microbes or something similar. Okay, now we'll get into that later, and you can read all about that in the articles on ArtAlienTV Mars magazine. So let's crack on with this. This may get a little bit complex because I'm trying to get across something here. Now, this woman here, who's actually really cool, actually, is just chatting to the presenter here about this woman's an astrobiologist. I've got her name up here somewhere. Her name is Jennifer Eichenbrode, okay, astrobiologist for NASA. And I want you to pay very close attention to her facial expressions and how she kind of moves and looks at the camera. Now, I understand she may be a little bit nervous here. This is quite a big announcement going on here. Probably many thousands of people watching live as well, not just on their channel, but on other channels as well. So I'm just going to play it through, and I may go back and replay a little bit of it again, but I may edit it for you as well. So here we go. Now pay attention to her face and how she kind of jumps back at the camera and looks quite shocked.
So, you know, we're looking at Gale Crater, and
so right, there we are. Did you see that? Now she looks at the middle of the image here, which is where right here is where the giant Sphinx is, just here, right, where my cursor is. And up on this mountain side here, we have what I've dubbed the Forbidden City, okay? And she looks at this part of the image, and then looks right up here, where we have like pyramids and ruined structures, multiple ruined structures up here on Mount Sharp, Aeolus Mons, okay? Now I'm just going to go back a tiny bit and show you that again. Watch how she moves her head and stares right back at you with a kind of spooked look on her face. Okay, watch again.
So we're looking at Gale Crater, and so how did these organics get here?
So we're looking at Gale Crater, so how did these organics get here?
So her eye kind of looks up and scans across, and then she flips her head around real quick. But I mean, most of the conference was fairly boring, and they sort of go on about possible organics causing the signatures that they're reading, and the main thing was basically that the drill bit is only 5 centimeters on the Curiosity rover, not really long enough to go down and find the really cool stuff below. So they really need to get down deeper into the ground, into the subsurface, to get samples that are not contaminated by radiation, because there's a lot of radiation hitting this ground here, and it penetrates about a meter into the rock, and basically they need to get below that before they get any really juicy kind of interesting stuff that isn't damaged by large amounts of cosmic radiation that's hitting the surface. Okay, so that was the main premise of the whole conference, really, and also the methane spikes, which we've known about since the 1970s, but they've just confirmed what we already know, and I've known about the methane in the atmosphere for many years now, and they basically didn't really tell us anything. But as I have always said with NASA, they're not bad people. These are scientists, and they want to disclose to the public what is going on, but they have been gagged. I've been saying this for years, and I think some of the body language we're seeing in this particular clip here is actual evidence of that, because it's almost like she's wanting you to notice that she's acting a bit strangely. Now, I do understand that this lady may be a bit nervous, of course, but there's something going on here, and there seems to be some kind of cover-up going on, not only between these people who are presenting this, but with NASA and JPL in general. Okay, here's one of the diagrams that they put up on the screen, which is basically showing the methane spikes here. So there'll be links below to all these things, so you can check them out. So I'll let you read up on that if you want to read up on that. It's pretty boring, but there we are. That's NASA for you. Science can be quite boring. So there's a bit of a conversation going on Coast to Coast. I put up this article that I did for the Express yesterday, and there's loads of people talking about it here. Well, they kept the moon a secret. Let's see what they do from Mars. Okay, and I put here, it was another whitewash, methane and organic compounds, and there's a few people chipping in here. Pretty funny, actually, some of these comments. So the general consensus is with most normal people, the civilians like ourselves, is that there's a lot of disappointment, and they've basically completely whitewashed us again, and haven't actually really told us anything we didn't already know. All they've done is confirm things that we already kind of knew. So I was really quite annoyed about it yesterday. I was going to do a video about it yesterday, but I thought I would sort of mull over it for a bit and calm down a little bit first, because I was really quite pissed about it, to be honest. Because this is the image they showed in the background on that big screen, which they were pointing at, and that is where, just here, is where the Sphinx is, just here, okay, along this blue strip. And up here, even at this level of zoom, you can see these highlighted structures up on the mountain, which looks very much like a ruined ancient city. And if you don't believe that, and you haven't been on this channel before, fair enough, but I do have evidence for it. And I've got this video here, which I did recently, pointed dome on Mars Mountain. This is the pointed dome, I call it the observatory, Forbidden City Observatory. So this is to the right of the Forbidden City, further along Mount Sharp, and you can clearly see this intelligent structure. Okay, now it's not a great quality image. I had to get this from a black and white image. There's not even a decent colour image of this. There are colour images of it, but they're very poor and extremely low quality. But the black and white image they gave us isn't terrible. It's not good, but it's not terrible. And there we are. So we have the pointed dome there, with obvious block-like square structures here, as well as a really nice pointed dome shape to it. Very intriguing image, that one. I won't spend too long on that because you can check it out yourself. The video is about 20 minutes long. But as always with all my videos, if you think they're too long, watch the first couple of minutes and then skip to the end. I often do that myself. You know what I mean? Most of all the images that are spoken of in the video are usually all shown in the last couple of minutes, and most of the information you need about downloading stuff and links and stuff is in at the beginning as well. So there we are. There's also this video which I did recently, sewer outlet on Mars Mountain. Now I call it a sewer outlet because that was a shorter title. I don't think it's actually a sewer outlet. What I think this is actually a storm drain overflow. Now that would be linked to any sewer system up here on the mountain, of course. But as some commenters did point out, if this was an actual sewer outlet, you would expect it to be a somewhat more stained colour. That may be the case, but of course this is probably millions of years old, this Forbidden City. And in this video you will see the Forbidden City details really well. You've got this, what I call the sewer outlet here, or storm drain overflow with water erosion coming down. You've got these outlets here. You've got a ruined structure up here, a ruined structure here, and you've got this, what I call the giant hangar on Mars here, right? Which is huge, absolutely huge. These are massive structures, hundreds and hundreds of feet wide. This is probably 300 or 400 feet wide, this thing, as is this. This actually was probably part of this whole structure here. Let's go in a bit closer. It should come in a bit closer now. We'll have a close-up. And you've also got this here with a strange symmetrical kind of shape cut out of it as well, this thing here. And there are loads and loads of shots of this Forbidden City, but this is one of the better ones that I've come across. Unfortunately, they rarely actually zoom into the Forbidden City enough for us to see it in great detail. So what we tend to get are distant shots that we then have to crop and then zoom in ourselves. And when you do that, of course, the image breaks up a bit and you don't see lots of detail. But that's what looks to me like a storm drain overflow, because it's below this city here. It's lower down the mountain, and this would have flowed straight into the lake. So if there was a storm, for instance, the water would have run down into the sewers and then shot out of, or come out of these pipes here. You can see it from multiple angles, these pipes, and would have run down into the water. And this would have been filled up to about here, the lake at that point, probably. You can see the water line, right? There it is again. And so you've really got to watch these more carefully to see the real stuff, because it gets in a lot closer, and you can see these little outlets here, which are actually huge in reality, but in the images they're not huge. Okay, so there's all sorts of stuff on Mount Sharp. There's the giant Sphinx. There's all sorts of stuff that I've found recently in front of Mount Sharp in Gale Crater. There is this one I posted up the other day, 2 aliens found on Mars. Really, really clear, even though these are tiny. These are only about 1 inch across each. Okay, really tiny. A lot of people said they might be statues, but I really doubt if there are statues that small. It's getting pretty doubtful there. So those are probably actual alien remains. And why are they so well preserved? Basically because of the atmosphere on Mars. It's so cold, lack of oxygen, lack of moisture. These are mummified. Okay? So it's a bit like if you died in space, you know, if you were chucked out of a spaceship or something, you would mummify because there's no oxygen. Okay, that's kind of what you're getting with Mars. There is a very, very small amount of oxygen. It's about 0.2% or something like that. Very low indeed. So there's loads of weird stuff. There's this thing I found last night or the other day. This is really weird. It's like a bear. I mean, I really don't even know what to call it, really. I've called it Bear on Mars ? This is from Sol 590, so this is an early image, and it's really been darkened, so you can't see. But even on the smaller one here, you can see the eye. Can you see that eye? Let your eyes adjust. You can see an eye pupil there, right? You can see the eye here, what looks kind of like a mouth, and a pointed nose, and an ear, just here. That's raw, okay? Let's zoom out and look at the enhancement up here. Here's a larger clip of the raw clip here. Let's look at the raw clip here first. See the eye? You've got to squint a little bit, and it does depend on the brightness settings on your device, but it's there. I'm not adding any detail that isn't already there. All I'm doing is very carefully brightening the object until we can see more detail, like I've done here. And you can see that eye pupil where my cursor is there, and the eye comes around. Is this mummified or is it some kind of statue? I can't tell you. There's not enough detail here to tell either way, as is usually the case with these finds on Mars. And I do find it very frustrating that they downgrade these images like they do. There's this thing as well, which I posted recently. I haven't done a video on this yet. This is another one that's like a statue. Let's go back a bit. Resembling Zeus or somebody similar with a beard. Not very clear. Another low quality image, and this is also very small. This is probably only about 3 or 4 inches tall, okay? Not very big. A lot of these things are really quite small, a lot smaller than you think they are. And there have been many examples of these things. And a lot of you may have seen some of these, but this is another recent thing that I haven't done a video about yet as well, which I found on Sol 2034. So this is from a really recent image, which was only taken about a week ago or two. Well, actually, yeah, a couple of weeks back. And it looks like an insect. Here's the raw image here at the bottom. Let's zoom in there. I'll put an arrow there just in case. And it's kind of on the edge of this rock. Now, this may not be an insect, but what if it is? And when you look at it up closely, like we got here, even in the raw clip here, you can see mandibles here and 2 black eyes here. Now, I used to keep insects. I fancied myself as a bit of a entomologist, really, and my brother kept loads of lizards and snakes, and I had a praying mantis, and I had all sorts of weird stuff as well. And the house was full of strange creatures because basically my uncle was a huge collector of strange animals and things like that. He kept lots of birds, but he also had loads and loads of lizards and insects, like stick insects and praying mantises and that kind of thing. Loads of stuff. It was like a zoo, his house. And when he died, my uncle, he left them all to us. So we were absolutely inundated with all these creatures when we were kids, you know. In our early teens, I think. I was probably about 13 or 14 at the time. And we just had all these creatures, and a lot of them were insects. There was a leaf bug as well I had. A giant leaf bug, which is enormous. And it reminded me of that. Or a cross between a leaf bug and maybe a praying mantis. This looks like a mantid or something similar. You've got these dark eyes with what look like mandibles either side here. Now, if we had more detail, we could really look at this and determine what it is exactly. But unfortunately, we're not zoomed into the image, and what we get is basically a sort of shot of this big rock here, and we just happen to capture it. Or they just happened to capture it by accident, and I came along and found it, you know. So they don't announce anything with these images, and in fact, the conference yesterday, the announcement, the NASA announcement, didn't mention any of the images. Didn't mention anything about any of the details in any of the images they've ever found. All they were talking about was the drilling for possible microbes and methane, and that was about it. And it was really a kind of overblown self-butt kissing contest, really, of a bunch of people who were very pleased with themselves. And I mean, they should be pleased with themselves. It's been, the Mars rover missions have been extremely successful and have lasted way longer than expected. But they never comment on any of this stuff. And I really do think, as in the article that may come out later that I did for the Express, I really do think they are acting under duress and are being gagged. So there we have it. So yeah, I mean that was the possible insect. It may not be, but it to me it looks like one. I did used to keep them, and the giant leaf bug I had, it was bigger than your hand. It had great big long legs which were about 14 inches long. I mean, this thing, I think it was the largest insect known insect at the time in the world. And we had one, and it used to crawl up your arm. It's like something out off an alien movie, you know. And it would crawl up your arm, and you couldn't get it off, you know. The legs on it were so strong. This thing had real power. It was almost like one of those face hugger things that you see on the Alien film. Really quite scary. It was perfectly harmless. It was a female leaf bug. They're the ones that grow massive. The males are tiny, more like this. So that was really cool. And there was this one. This is another Steve Bolden find from a few days ago. And there's the raw clip, which he put up on Mars Magazine page. Instantly, I saw that. I thought, yeah, that's a skull. As soon as I looked at it up close, you got teeth, you got a nasal cavity there, and an eye socket. Okay, half of it's in heavy shadow. So what? Doesn't matter. There's enough detail there. And actually, this is a Spirit rover image, and this is surprisingly good, this one. You can even see the wheels. They were almost about to run over the thing. You know, you can see the track here, either side. You've got the track coming down here. They literally drove over it. But luckily, didn't drive right into it. So it's another example of a really interesting. This almost looks like a bear as well, quite scary looking. And this is a raw clip here, enlarged, and then an enhanced clip. There is a limit to how much I can do with these images, of course, because they are pretty low quality. So you've got to kind of let your eyes adjust, but you can see the eye socket here where I've upped the contrast, and another one here, and a nasal cavity here. You've even got that little nasal bone that goes up the middle of the nose there, which is cool. That's a very specific detail, okay, and is in exactly the right place. And you've got actually quite big, chunky teeth here as well, and what looks like the remains of a canine tooth there. You see this shadow? There's also a highlight there. That is canine. This is a large canine creature, but they're not as big as bear skull canines on Earth. So this is different morphology here, and the shape's different. Of course, it'd be nice to see it from the side. This is kind of semi-mummified and maybe a million years old. I don't know how old it is, but to me it looks a bit like a bear, but not a bear, as we know it anyway. Okay, it kind of looks better from that distance. So there's multiple things on Mars, and it's really about time that they owned up, but I really don't think they will. And they're certainly not going to admit microbes until they get that 2020 rover up there with the 2-meter drill bit on it. They're not going to admit microbes, or at least they won't announce microbial life until they do that, of course, because they really do have to verify. I understand that. And they must be very frustrated when they see, they obviously watch these videos and posts that I put up in the press, which are published all over the world, as well as in America and Asia and Europe, everywhere. You know, and the giant Sphinx is the thing that woman would have seen in the image as she was doing the announcement. This is visible in that big image they had on screen, but not in great clarity. But she's probably seen these images that I've done. These images were in the press a couple of years ago, back in 2016, and all over the press in America. So you must have seen them. And they've also been back in the press again. I've got them back in there. So there's been a sort of re-interest in these things. There's also this thing that I found the other day. This is from Sol 590, which is going right back. This looks like a little mummified boy, I've called him. The Mars boy. Could be a girl, don't know. Might be transgender, who knows? Maybe that happens on Mars as well. Who knows, guys? So there we have it. I mean, there's loads of stuff here. Some of this I've published in videos, some of it I haven't. There was this weird object that I found about a week ago from Sol 64, which was a weird kind of box with something coming out of it. Talking of boxes, I mean, I don't know what this is. I have no idea, but it's a box. It's hollow, and it has something coming out of it, and it's a really odd shape, and it's kind of joined to this. Let's go back a bit on that. Really strange. I don't know what that is. I have no idea, but it doesn't look like a normal rock. Okay, so if it's not a normal rock, what is it? So yeah, that was an interesting one. That was a while back I spotted that. So what I will often do now is post a lot of these finds on Mars Magazine, but they won't necessarily make it into a video. But what I tend to do after a while is do a little compilation video, a bit like I'm doing here, and show lots of things together, because it's not really worth making a video about this on its own, I don't think. Some of you may disagree. But there's so many things here that I can't possibly make a video about everything, like this weird thing, which I think I called it the dragon head. It looks a bit like the sort of dragon head of a Viking ship or something. It isn't, probably, but look at the angle of it. It's impossible. So there must be something pinning this to the ground underneath, underpinning it. This must be joined to something for it to actually do that. Now I know there's less gravity on Mars, but that is just insane. There's some weird stuff going on here. There's this old one that I published ages ago. I actually did a video of this, but it didn't do very well. Don't know what it is. Metal object, which is kind of tubular in shape, kind of sticking up here with like an arm. Could it be a creature? Could it be an insect? Doubt it. It's too symmetrical, this thing. Don't know what it is. I've never really figured it out. So answers on a postcard, guys. What do you think some of these things are? You know, I don't claim to know everything about this stuff. You couldn't possibly, because we're looking at an alien planet here, and some of these things are really difficult to work out, and you don't know whether you're looking at technology or creatures or carvings half the time, because the images aren't good enough quality. So it's a real guessing game, which is why I call this alien or space detective work, because that really is what we're trying to do. Visual, digital archaeology, detective work. There's this great find by Sarah Runcie, which I published a while back. I did a video on this. This is superb. Absolutely superb. Sarah Runcie found this a while back. There's no date on here. I can't remember what the date is, but it wasn't long ago. Well, there is a video on this, which you can check out. There's the raw clip there, and these are enhanced. That is a mummified head. I don't think it's a carving, because the eyes are shut. Generally carvings have open eyes, but maybe not. But the conditions on Mars are absolutely perfect for mummification, because there's no moisture and no oxygen. So these would last for many thousands of years. But of course, it may have been buried in sand and rubble until very recently. We don't know. So more and more speculation there. There's also this little owl thing which I found, which is quite cute, I thought. This is from Sol 198. I found that a few days ago, last week. Pretty unremarkable, really. Low quality image with a strange object here, which looks like it's got like arms or wings either side, and a funny shaped head with not a lot of detail, but kind of what looks a bit like a beak and an eye there and an eye there. Don't really know. Image quality is too poor. And I don't draw onto the loads of detail in these images that isn't there, because that's a little bit dishonest, I think. I only just enhance them a bit, so you can just about make out what I'm trying to get across. Brighten them up. add contrast, that kind of thing. So there we are. I won't go through all these now. Some of these will appear in videos, and most of them already have. There was this one. I haven't done a video on this either yet, not specifically. This meme I put together the other day. This is really, really crazy. Could this be living? There's the raw clip. There, completely raw. There's the raw clip again, a bit larger at the top. Okay, just there. And there's the enhanced clip there. You've got an eye, you've got a nose here, clear kind of snout, mouth. You can even just about make out some teeth there. And the ear is almost identical in shape to this. If you look at it, it's got that slight point just there, coming round, coming down like that. Slight point here, coming round to there. It's not the same. It's also got that slightly angular. Look at this slightly angular inner ear part there. Comes at an angle, right? We have a similar thing going on here. It's not round. It's kind of almost square. See that? Now, could this be mummified, or could it be a living monkey or creature of some sort? I'm not saying it is a baboon. I'm just putting that there for comparison. It's the closest thing I could find in the sort of nose area, especially. And obviously, this mouth is open and the chin's hanging down. Now, it may just be a rock that happens to look like one, but if you take into account all the other things found in the area, you've really got to think twice about everything. And you've really got to think out of the box. And in fact, you've got to climb out of that box and throw that box out of the frickin' window, okay? Because there's just too much evidence here for it all to be a coincidence and for it just to be pareidolia, as people keep saying. The new version of the word swamp gas or weather balloon, okay? So, be skeptical, yes. Keep an open mind, yes. Think out of the box, yes. Get that box, pick it up, and throw it out the window. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.